All right, guys. So this is yet another one of those kinds of topics that's been in my mind for a while now, and maybe some of you could agree with this. Maybe you've seen this similar kind of thing as well with other places, and I will talk about other places in this. But I put bowling center in the title because that's an activity that I really enjoy doing. I've really enjoyed it a lot more since about like 14 years ago, I would say. So it's definitely been something of mine that's been a favorite. Now, what I'm talking about is the way the interiors of these buildings have been lately, and just the trend, if you want to call it that they're setting, which is really annoying and very out of place. Let me explain. So, let's go back to the bowling center back on Long Island, the one I went to from the time we moved there until I moved here in 2017. And here's Bella again. Um, so, Uh, so basically, from 1990 until, well, I mean, that's when we moved there, but we'll just go with that year. From 1990 until 2005, it was a very welcoming center interior, with some changes here and there. Basically, the major part of it was, you had your fluorescent lights in the ceiling, and you had your row. I think it's called step lighting. Basically, down the lanes, the ceiling kind of slopes like this. Okay, and at each of those angles, that's where the lights are that shine forward. You have your lights shining over the lanes, and you had lighting for seating by the approach for where you could eat food or whatever, and also look at this, and also but by the approaches and things like that. So, all right. And the way it worked was really nice with that row lighting, or at least in this center. Not all centers are designed like this, but this one was, okay. At the end of the lanes, there's like a curved ceiling that's towards the masking panels. The masking panels are what hide the machines. And it was painted white, which was really nice, because all the light that was shined over there, it kind of reflected back towards you. And man, I'm getting a video bomb here. And you know, it really, like I said, it brightened things up. It really made the place you were at feel very welcoming. And sometime in the mid '90s, um, that's when the whole, the occasional black lights with the dance lighting thing started. And for like the kids and things like that, like when I was a kid at the time. And one thing they did do was when they made that change, they also added more regular lights by the approaches where you wait to throw your bowling ball. And I love that because it made the place even brighter than it was. You know what I'm saying? I'm a guy who likes open spaces and bright lighting. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a very welcoming thing. Every time you go there, it was nice and just really, like I said, welcoming and things like that. Then, of course, that lasted for many years. But then, of course, that changed. I went there one time with my brother in 2005. I'm gonna say my later part of 11th grade, and they had done a renovation there. What they did was they painted the walls, different colors, this and that. But they also changed the light fixtures in some way where the bulbs that they had in the fixtures were now different and not as bright, of course. And the biggest change that they did, which I really did not like, was that curved ceiling at the end I told you about. They painted it brown, all right? And obviously, that white ceiling now being brown really darkened things up quite a bit. Now, brown has a lot of shades here, so it wasn't the darkest brown, but it basically looked like how let's say the color of coffee after you put in cream or milk. That's basically what it looked like. And I really didn't like that. Like I came in there and I'm like, oh, this change isn't all that good. Like it used to be so bright and welcoming in here. Now it's like this. I didn't like it, but whatever. I lived with it. Obviously, I just wasn't a fan of it. I'm thinking maybe sometime in the future it'll change, and obviously it did, and it wasn't for the better. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Or maybe we'll get to it now. Let me think. Anything else here? Yeah, so like I said, that was the first thing I noticed was that they made the insides darker than they used to be with the regular lighting. The dance lighting didn't matter, obviously, but the regular lighting, I'm like, I don't like this. This does not have the welcoming appeal that it used to have. You know what I'm saying? So then around yeah, in summertime of 2016, I was in a bowling league from 2012 to 2017 because that's why I was there regularly. In summer of 2017, they had another renovation. Okay, and that was like a huge difference. All right, they tried to take part in this whole arcade theme. You know what I'm saying? Like, so basically, okay, so they oh my god, what am I trying to say here? Sorry, give me a second here. Yeah, so that 2005 renovation lasted for 11 years, and then in 2016 they completely changed it around even more to the point where I'm just like, this is stupid, okay, and it really was. So now the flat ceiling or all the other ceilings, okay, they painted it purple, okay, so that made the place even darker than it already was, and they also changed a lot of the lighting. They have these like red neon lights now, okay? And they had this row lighting by the tables. Maybe I mentioned that already. They got rid of that lighting completely. And what did they do? They put these like tiny little hanging light fixtures in the place where the fluorescent row lights used to be. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, this is not a bowling center. This looks like an arcade mixed with a fancy restaurant. And this is when that whole trend started happening. I'm just like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what is this? Like, this is even worse than how it was before. It was making the 2005 renovation look extremely good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the way they were, like I said, like with the new tables, these little light fixtures that didn't give off much light at all, okay? And the ceiling painted purple all around. And the one thing they did at the end, which I couldn't stand, they kept it off during leagues, but still, was that, they started this whole trend now where at the end of the lanes, the masking panels were replaced with these projector screens with anything on them, and it was ridiculous. I mean, they were trying to make this place look like a Jillian's. Jillian's, wow, has that place even been around anymore? What is it? Like Dave and Buster's is the place now, but same idea. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. People don't come to a bowling center for this stuff. They come because they want to hang out with friends, bowl, and whatever. And I mean, why even bother with the projector screens? By this point, people are going to be staring at their phones and posting FML on Facebook and Twitter anyway. So it's like, why even bother with that? The environment that these bowling centers have nowadays went from something very simple, open, welcoming, and inviting to like fancy and just excessive and dark, like I always say. It's crazy. I mean, it is just so ridiculous that this is like the trend now. And here's the other thing. I started bowling at a center here, not for league, just with people I know, around August of 2018, and I loved it because I went back to a regular kind of bowling center. I mean, it has its own arcade, but that's perfectly fine. The arcade area is separate from the bowling area, so they have their own things, which I was more okay with. The bowling area is great. They had some maybe decorations on the wall, but they had masking panels, white ceilings, ceiling fans, and a bit your typical bowling center setup. And they had tables for each lane. You could easily walk around. It was a beautiful setup. I was so happy to have that kind of environment again. And I go there, every now and then. And then, of course, I get word that around June, I think it was, June or July, they made announcement of a renovation. And as soon as they said renovation, huge red flag, I'm like, oh no, they're going to renovate this place. That can only mean one thing. And sure enough, the same thing happened. Ceilings painted dark, fancy chandelier-like lights over the lane areas, okay? New seating that was a lot more restrictive for movement than what it used to have. And again, these projector screens over the lanes. It's like, why? I mean, that is not a bowling center. I don't know how else to say that. It really isn't. It's like, you know, the environment that they're getting for these places is all wrong. I mean, like, like picture it for yourselves, guys. You walk in to a bowling center, and the first thing you see is dark ceilings, dark bowling areas with these like little funky chandelier lightings. I mean, seriously, people, it's a bowling center. Okay, this isn't like the formal dining room on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship. Okay, it's a place where people go to have fun. It's for recreation. Places like that deserve, the fluorescent lighting. I mean, you can even have LED lights now if you want instead of fluorescent. You've seen the LED lights in the cabana. It's similar principle. You know, it's like I said, you should have that instead of all this other stuff because it is not a fancy place. It's a bowling center. And it really annoys me so much that so many places seem to be following this trend. All right, maybe it is a trend. Okay, I don't know. Will it go away sometime? Maybe it will. And if it's here for a long time, I'll certainly live with it. Okay, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. And it's not just limited to bowling centers. Okay, I've gone to fast food places like Burger King, Taco Bell, McDonald's on occasion, things like that. And it was the same principle. I'll give you some McDonald's renovation things here. Okay. So the one I used to go to back on Long Island, I remember as a kid, I remember how it was. You had, I'll just go with the lighting in the windows here. That's the best I remember. You had windows that went from the ceiling to about halfway down to the floor. You had fluorescent lighting, and you had, what else stood out? And, it was your typical fast food place, decent lighting, you walk in, nice and bright, simple place, go sit down, have your food, whatever. Then the only weird thing about that McDonald's was the tiled floor and the drop ceiling were diagonally mounted. So you had a diagonal drop ceiling with diagonal lights, which was very weird, definitely. I mean, they still did the job, but it just looked weird in my opinion. And then that McDonald's got renovated in, I believe, after the turn of the millennium in 2000. And basically, that renovation was awesome. They kept the same fluorescent lighting, but they straightened out the floor, straightened out the drop ceiling, and the windows now went from about the ceiling all the way down to the floor. So you can imagine just how much more lighting there was coming into that McDonald's. And it was fantastic. You like the first time I walked in, I'm like, wow, this place feels so much more open. It's so much brighter than it used to be. This is nice. I really like this. And it stayed that way for a long time. There was one change in 2004, I believe, where a lot of McDonald's, their sodas became self-serve. So they moved the soda machine from the kitchen to the sitting area, obviously. Now, the way this place had to do it was they had to move it into a place where two tables and a window used to be. So they had to take one of the windows out because they had to put the soda machine there. But, aside from that, that was no big deal. It still looked very welcoming and this and that. And it stayed that way for a long time. And then around, when did this McDonald's get renovated? Around 2016, 2017, that place got renovated too, all right? And it was the same thing. They took a couple windows out for whatever reason. They changed the doors. The fluorescent lights gone, and the walls, which were kind of like I don't know, whitish, bluish. Think of a typical bright color, okay, for a wall. They changed it to like a dark brown and like some like black areas and dark gray. I like gray, but not this kind of dark gray. And of course, the lighting was like all these weird spotlights now. And it's the same thing. I'm like, this is a fast food place. Why are you making this look like an upscale restaurant? That's not what it is. I don't know why you're trying to make it this way. And when that renovation happened, I hated the way it looked in there. It was so dark. It was same thing with the bowling center. It was so dark. It was way too fancy for my liking. And again, it's like, all these spotlights, dark ceilings, dark walls. I'm like, why? I mean, it's like they're trying to make these places look like Starbucks, okay? And I mean, I don't go to Starbucks. I don't drink coffee. And even if I did drink coffee, I wouldn't go to Starbucks, okay? I don't care for that place. I'm not going to spend, $8 for a cup of coffee. But anyway, it's the same thing. Same thing with, Taco Bell. Burger King isn't quite as bad. They're still a little bit brighter in that regard. But like Taco Bell, same thing. They darken everything and all these funky spotlights. Again, why? It's a fast food place, people, okay? If you want to go to a fancy restaurant and waste $42 on a piece of meat, okay, go to Blackstone over on Route 110. That place is ridiculous, but that's the idea I'm trying to get here. They're making all these places trying to look fancy, and they're not fancy places. The fact of the matter is they're not fancy. It's a fast food place, okay? You shouldn't be trying to make something look like everything else. Again, I'm hoping this is a temporary thing, but you get the idea. Bowling is something that I like a lot, and it really annoys you that it really annoyed me when I went to this one center, and I'm like, oh, fantastic! It's just like how I remember these bowling centers, and of course that one gets changed. Like I said, I really hope this is a temporary thing. And again, if it's not, I'll live with it, but I'm not going to like it. I'd like to know if you guys experience similar things, okay? Have you guys gone to a place that used to be understandably basic and then they try to make it all fancy, they darkened it, and it just seems so out of place? I would really like to know. You guys let me know, okay? Because environments like that, the way they're becoming today, I can't stand them. Thankfully, where I live is not like that, and hopefully it stays that way. I'm sure it will. But that's what I gotta say, okay? Places that are trying to look fancy, that are not fancy, should not look fancy, okay? You know what I'm saying? That's how it should be. Hope you guys enjoy my points, and let me know if you experience similar things as well. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.